A few months ago, the Young Turks published a video where Hassan Piker rants and raves about the Baraboo high school students who posed Nazi salutes for a prom picture. In the video, Hassan presents footage of the photographer along with one of the students downplaying the picture as a misunderstanding, perhaps even a joke.
Remember, he said, raise your hand.
Did he say anything to make it clear that it was raise your hand in this way, as this Nazi symbol?
He did not say raise your hand in a Nazi symbol way, and I'm pretty sure my classmate just interpreted as raise your hand, let's do this as a joke.
Okay, boys, you're going to say goodbye to your parents, so wave. And I put my hand up, I said, now you're looking towards me, wave, say goodbye, and they go, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, stick your hand up in a high five and wave. And that was it. I took one or two pictures. I posted one with it, with all the boys waving goodbye, and we had talked about say goodbye to your parents because they were going out to dance that night, and most of them hadn't planned on getting home very early.
Yeah, it wasn't a Nazi salute, for sure, guy.
Now, we can either give this photographer and the student the benefit of the doubt, or else we'd have to assume that all of these American high schoolers are actually white supremacists who long for an ethno-state in America. And who knows, maybe these high school students are white supremacists, although I'm skeptical. Nevertheless, Hassan Piker does not take kindly to people normalizing a brutal dictatorship that slaughtered millions of people by goofing around with Nazi salutes. Hassan Piker is upset, and he will not tolerate normalizing a brutal dictatorship, especially on prom night.
Now, this school decided to go with the controversial route. This is Cottonwood Classical Preparatory School, and they voted on a communism-themed prom. I don't know how that's gonna work, but it sounds hilarious. Hilarious.
Because they're edgelords. It's for the memes, guys. It's for the lulz. Thank God. First of all, they're all like international baccalaureate students, so they're all like, oh, we're gonna have a communist theme party. Like, they're all nerds. Because they're edgelords. It's for the memes, guys. It's for the lulz. Like, and at least they're having a communist theme party and not like some crazy like racial segregation theme party or something like that, which happens all the time. True. And, you know, everyone knows, ain't no party like a communist party, because the communist party don't stop.
Now, one of two things is true here. Hassan Proletariat Piker was just joking about how cool it would be to have a communist-themed prom, and thinks that communism is just one big funny joke.
Because they're edgelords. It's for the memes, guys. It's for the lulz.
Which makes him a bit of a hypocrite to suddenly lose his shit on the Baraboo high school students. Or Hassan Proletariat Piker actually endorses communism. Which, judging by his Twitter account, Hassan Proletariat Piker looks like he's pretty eager to throw some well-off people into gulags. Which means that the Young Turks employs people that promote communism. Recently, Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks, who thinks that communism is hilarious,
but it sounds hilarious,
hosted a segment called Dave Rubin is a useful idiot for fascism because Dave Rubin endorsed Brazil President Jair Bolsonaro. Is Bolsonaro fascist? I honestly don't know enough about him. But for the sake of argument, let's take Anna Kasparian at her word. This is a legitimate criticism because any reasonable person would want to prevent fascism from gaining momentum. So if Dave Rubin is endorsing fascists, Dave Rubin should be called out. If Dave Rubin has questionable guests on his show and does not do enough to challenge them, Dave Rubin should be called out. So the Young Turks would be right to call out Dave Rubin for endorsing fascism. The problem is that the Young Turks themselves are a group of useful idiots for communists and socialists, as I just illustrated with the fact that they employ Hassan Proletariat Piker.
But wait, there's more!
The network's face, King Cenk,
Of course!
King Cenk often presents himself as a moderate, a voice of reason.
Now, if you're saying communism is where the government makes all of those things, I totally and utterly disagree, and I think that's a bad form of government. Now, I often say that I'm totally in favor of capitalism, and by that I mean a mixed economy like the one we currently have, but probably a little closer to Europe, which in some circles would be called socialist. So it's just a matter of splitting hairs as to what you call socialist and what you call capitalist. But don't believe the extremes. Don't, like the guys who are free market libertarians that think the government should do nothing are insane. The guy who think the government should do everything, unfortunately, equally insane. The answer is somewhere in the middle. Go.
On the other hand, King Cenk often invites communists like Richard Wolff and Andy Zion to discuss politics and economics. And while King Cenk does challenge them,
is it fair to say communist revolution in the case of the bookstore?
It is fair to say that, but it's the new communism that's learned from the revolutions of the 20th century, but has really transcended what they were doing while not disavowing them in any kind of way, but building on the achievements that they did have. But they were obviously, not only were those revolutions defeated, but they had serious shortcomings in method approach and even in how they did their various things.
Yeah, to say the least. Right, I mean, communism as a concept is fascinating. We could discuss and maybe even debate it, but the way that it was carried out in the Soviet Union left a lot to be desired, to say the least. But it's partly related to this. I mean, look, in the Soviet Union, you say they did a couple of things wrong. Over 20, 25 million people died under Stalin, so it's not just a couple of things. And my point isn't that communism by definition leads to that. I'm not a right-winger, but it does seem to lead almost every time to a strongman taking over and turning it into a dictatorship. So isn't that a structural flaw, that in fact humans are not built to just cooperate and have almost no government, that eventually a strongman steps into the vacuum and becomes a dictator?
King Cenk is not nearly as hard on communists as he is with people like Ron Paul, Andrew Breitbart, Sam Harris, and Peter Schiff.
We don't have the benefits of capitalism anymore because we don't have capitalism. We have a centrally planned socialist economy, and that is why the average American
I'm
is
done
getting
with
poor.
that load of
If
crap.
we want to change
Okay,
that circumstance,
Peter, I'm done with you.
If we want the middle class
No, you guys don't get it. I'm done with him. He's done. Move away from him. Okay, bring him down. He won't shut up, okay, and he doesn't listen to facts.
Now, this all might be a coincidence, although I do find it a little suspicious that Cenk Uygur seems to find being a right-winger, whatever that means, more insulting than being a communist.
And my point isn't that communism by definition leads to that. I'm not a right-winger. I'm not a right-winger. No, not a right-winger.
The Young Turks frequently has Francesca Fiorentini of AJ+ on their panels, someone who has been trying to shove socialism down our throats for years.
Nothing.
No, it means that 14% of America might be communist.
That's true, yeah, maybe. The news is that anyone doesn't support that, right?
Right,
Yeah.
So there's 14% of Americans that are either opposed to or not sure that we should have personal property? That is interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay. I'm not sure I agree, but okay. I didn't know that the country had that big a percentage of super left wing.
I do. Property is theft.
Yeah. Abby Martin is another frequent guest on the Young Turks to run interference for Nicolas Maduro and the Venezuelan government. Now, if Dave Rubin is a useful idiot for fascism for endorsing Jair Bolsonaro, then what does that make Abby Martin for defending Nicolas Maduro?
That's a mystery.
The Young Turks also likes to run clickbait titles like Piers Morgan gets destroyed by a communist. Now, it might be true that Piers Morgan got embarrassed by a communist. After all, Piers Morgan gets embarrassed on television all the time. The point is that the Young Turks would never run a headline like Piers Morgan gets owned by Ben Shapiro. Although I guess the Daily Wire does enough of that already. The Young Turks goes through great lengths to analyze and scrutinize Republican politicians. And great, I want all politicians under a microscope. However, when it comes to socialists like Bernie Sanders and Josephine Stalin, the Young Turks merely nod along and smile without question. For instance, when the Mercatus report on Medicare for All came out over the summer, all the Young Turks did was play a clip of Bernie Sanders thanking the Koch brothers, followed by 10 minutes of talking about how right Bernie Sanders is. Did they even bother to read the report?
No, of course not.
And this is a huge problem with the Young Turks, with their hosts often presenting themselves as somewhat moderate voices of reason, outside of the influence of big corporate advertisers, clinging to the moral high ground by claiming to stand up for the little guy while fighting authoritarianism like fascism, all while they employ Hassan proletariat piker and entertain Marxist intellectuals who promote their own form of authoritarianism. Then the Young Turks get all upset when people pile on them for screwing up their coverage.
Oh, so you said that it was a white guy. What happened? Oh, so you said that it was a white guy. What happened? What happened? What happened?
What happened is that people started to recognize the Young Turks for the useful idiots that they are, and are tired of their grandstanding with these guilt by association games, all while TYT hosts play grab ass with communists.